Rachel Maddow didn't adjust her tone. She adjusted the table, pushed her notes 2 inches back, folded her hands, and looked directly into the camera. Tonight's guest is Elon Musk. You already know what he builds. You already know what he breaks. What you may not know is what he does when he doesn't control the format. No smile. No preamble. No music. She nodded once to the producer. Cut to Elon Musk walking onto the set. He didn't wave. Didn't pause. He moved like someone used to walking into rooms where everyone recalibrated around him. Rachel Maddow didn't recalibrate. She stood. They shook hands. His grip, brief. Dry. Functional. Hers, firm. Still. They sat. The space between them wasn't charged. It was loaded. Like two people sitting at opposite ends of a power source no one had labeled yet. Rachel began. Not with welcome. With intent. You agreed to this interview, she said, knowing this isn't a forum that rewards evasion. Elon Musk looked at her. No smile. No flinch. I agreed, he said, because I don't need the room to like me. Just to listen long enough. Rachel replied. Then let's begin. She didn't ask about Twitter. She didn't ask about Tesla. She said, you've redefined space travel, currency, speech. But what have you risked, personally, in pursuit of any of it? Elon blinked once, then said, my comfort, my image, sometimes even my credibility. Because comfort's a luxury, not a legacy. Rachel asked, and when legacy replaces accountability? Elon leaned slightly forward. Then you stop talking to people who care more about headlines than outcomes. Rachel said, good. Then we can keep going. Rachel Maddow didn't look at her notes. She didn't need to. She already knew that questions don't need to be sharp when the guest is used to answering only what he's prepared for. She asked, you talk about disruption. You celebrate risk. But you rarely speak about responsibility. What happens when disruption creates damage? Elon Musk smiled faintly. Disruption always creates damage. The question is whether the damage is worth what comes next. Rachel replied. And who gets to decide that? Elon didn't flinch. History. Eventually. Rachel shook her head once. Not disagreement. Clarification. That's convenient for the person making the mess. The audience was quiet. Not out of tension. Out of recalibration. They were trying to figure out if this was a trap or a table that finally couldn't be flipped. Elon leaned back. You think I'm dodging? Rachel answered. I think you've practiced sounding like you're telling the truth without ever staying in it long enough to be pinned down. He blinked slowly. Not offended. Calculating. And I think you've built a show where you get to feel right more than you get to feel doubt. That hit. But Rachel didn't move. I don't need to feel doubt. I need to hear it when it's honest. She paused, then asked, so tell me something you're not sure about. Elon didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know. Because it was the first time in a long time he'd been asked something without an escape hatch. Finally, he said, I'm not sure people want the future they claim to believe in. They want the version that doesn't cost them anything. Rachel nodded. And do you believe that's what you're building? Elon said, I think I'm building the version they'll blame when it doesn't match their fantasy. That was the first moment the room felt still. Not frozen. Just listening. Because no one expected vulnerability. Especially not from someone who built rockets and platforms and personas. Rachel leaned in. And are you okay being blamed? Elon replied. I'm not here to be okay. I'm here to survive the part where the room tries to make me small. Rachel looked at him carefully. Then we're in agreement. Neither of us came to shrink. Rachel Maddow set her pen down. Not to pause. To disarm. She asked. You've built empires by anticipating the future. But you're here now, in a room you don't control, in a moment you can't edit. What do you do with a future you didn't design? Elon Musk's eyes didn't narrow, but something behind them did. He answered, I adapt. Fast. Rachel said, adaptation without reflection isn't evolution. It's survival. Elon replied, then maybe survival is the most honest thing left. The crew didn't blink. The air behind the cameras didn't move. Rachel asked, is that why you came here? To survive a room that doesn't need you? Elon looked at her with perfect stillness. No. I came to see if the room could stay upright when I didn't perform for it. Rachel nodded once. And how's it holding up? Elon said. So far, No one's clapped. That's a good sign. It wasn't flippant. It wasn't dry. It was something else. A man who'd grown so used to being decoded that he had stopped translating himself altogether. Rachel pressed. You've redefined freedom. Redefined wealth. Redefined the limits of physics. What haven't you touched? Elon answered. Humility. That's not a feature in my design. That's a flaw I'm still mapping. That landed. Not because it was self-aware. Because it wasn't softened. Rachel asked, does it matter to you if people think you're dangerous? Elon said, it matters if they're right. Rachel followed. And are they? Elon replied, sometimes. But only when I stop listening and start proving something. Rachel asked, what are you trying to prove right now? Elon blinked. Once. Twice. Then said, that I can sit still in a room that doesn't orbit me. The red light on the camera was still on. But the interview wasn't operating like one anymore. Rachel Maddow sat with her arms folded, not closed, just composed. Elon Musk leaned forward, elbows on the edge of the desk, eyes steady. No pretense. No packaging. Just a man used to steering systems, now trying to steer a moment that no longer bends. Rachel asked, what does losing look like to you? Elon answered, silence. Not the good kind. The kind where nothing comes back because nothing was heard. Rachel said, you're heard constantly. Elon nodded, but only the version people already decided on. Rachel leaned in. And what's the version sitting here now? He paused, then said, the one that doesn't care how this ends. Only that it wasn't faked. A silence fell. Not heavy, not fragile, just clean. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for applause. It just wants to stay standing. Rachel finally asked, would you do this again? Elon didn't smile. If the room doesn't need a hero or a villain next time, maybe. Rachel nodded, then added, but what if it needs an ending? Elon looked at her, calm. Then maybe it was never a conversation. Just content waiting to be cut. The control room stayed frozen. No countdown. No cue. No pivot. Because the people who built the segment hadn't planned for what it became. And now no one wanted to be the first to flatten it. Rachel Maddow glanced toward the control room. Not for a cue. Just to acknowledge that she knew the clock was gone. No one was counting down. No one was asking her to rap. Because what had happened couldn't be wrapped. It had to be left whole. She turned back to Elon Musk. You said you came here to survive the room. Do you think you did? Elon answered, I think I didn't distort it. That's enough. Rachel tilted her head slightly. That sounds like a low bar for someone who's trying to change the future. Elon replied, that's because most people mistake presence for control. Sometimes just staying put is the only way to resist gravity. They sat there, not frozen, not waiting, just honoring a space that had, for once, refused to collapse into a headline. Rachel said, this won't trend. Elon nodded. Then it might finally matter. She folded her notes. Didn't stack them. Didn't smile. Just held the silence as long as it asked to be held. Elon stood first. Not abrupt. Not dramatic. He stood like someone who didn't need to win. Only to walk out with his shape unchanged. Rachel stayed seated. Not in dismissal. In respect. And for the first time in the show's memory, no music played as the guest exited the frame. Because nothing needed to be softened. Only remembered. 2 weeks later, Rachel Maddow sat with her producers in a quiet review session. No audience. No cameras. No laughter from the room next door. She replayed the segment. Not to study Elon Musk's answers. To study what didn't happen. There was no escalation. No walk-off. No final blow. Just two people who never tried to dominate and still refused to concede. She paused the clip, then said, that's what it looks like when no one plays for the clip. And everyone stays whole. Elon Musk didn't comment publicly. Didn't tweet a takeaway. Didn't deny or dramatize. But in an internal meeting days later, one of his senior staff asked, why did you go on that show? Elon looked out a window for a moment, then said, because I wanted to see if I could sit still inside a conversation that didn't serve me. He didn't say more. And no one pressed him. Because the people in the room understood something had shifted, not externally. Internally. The segment didn't make headlines. But in journalism schools, media think tanks, and quiet corners of tech, it circulated. One professor called it a confrontation with no blood. Just clarity. Another wrote, What happens when power walks into truth and doesn't know which one is supposed to sit down first? But most people who saw it didn't write about it. They just remembered how it felt and wondered if maybe, just maybe, that's what accountability could sound like. Rachel never aired a follow-up. Elon never asked for a second chance. They both knew the silence that followed was the answer neither one had to say aloud.